You're listening to Mind Over Me, the mental wellness podcast with me, Scott Carter. I am a licensed therapist. Here at Mind Over Me, I offer an unconventional approach to therapy and mental health in general. The therapy system is misguided and broken. So many people are turning to mental health professionals for help, and they're just not finding it. It's my goal to bring some unconventional means, unconventional views, and maybe some unconventional techniques to helping people find mental wellness. Instead of being dependent on a system or a medication or a professional for mental wellness or mental stability, my goal is to always empower and help people by teaching them how to help themselves. This podcast is about self-efficacy, self-determination, and self-empowerment. Every person needs to find a better connection with themselves. Whether you realize it or not, you are the answer to your problems. You just need better information, and I hope to give it to you. So, thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Alrighty, welcome back, fellow seekers. Thanks for being here. This is the next installment of Mind Over Me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Hope this episode finds you well out there. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the troubling, enigmatic, complicated issue of curing mental illness. I have gathered a lot of information over the years. I've worked tirelessly to create good outcomes in my therapy practice. So that people get results. That's really my primary goal, is to help people get results. And this is a particular point on my mind recently about just getting people results, because I got into a little bit of a spat on TikTok with a pediatrician. Now, believe me when I say that for the most part, I know better. I know better than to argue with strangers on the internet, but the arrogance of some doctors, just now I'm learning, right? This has taught me that this is an area where I need to manage my emotions a bit better, right? It's also teaching me and giving me some insights about my own ego, and where it just, I don't know, where it needs more work, where it needs to be put into check. What has bugged me about doctors is their hubris, their arrogance, and how they don't like to be challenged. Their egos, doctor egos. Holy cow! If you've never worked with doctors, you might think, "Wow, doctors are great. Doctors are lovely." And then there are a lot of people out there who have worked in healthcare and have interacted with doctors, and they know the truth that most of them are insufferable assholes. But my ego comes in as like, you know what? It's my job. It's my job to call these dickheads out. When it's not. It's not my job. It's not my job to do that. It's not my job. See, this is where my ego is running away with me, right? So I kind of tell the story to illustrate a little bit of a point. And that point is that everything can teach us something about ourselves, which is ultimately my goal and my desire for the podcast and my content in general. I think we are in dire need these days of people to look more closely at themselves and to just focus on themselves and primarily work on themselves. And it's situations like this that I need to remind myself I don't know as much as I think I do. I really don't. And for the most part, just like everybody else, I have no idea what I'm actually doing in life. That's not entirely true. I have some idea. But I have so much more to work on. So much more to work on. What I have learned is that it's so easy to throw ourselves and our own egos at other people and things outside of our control and allow ourselves to get annoyed with people and try and make them change. And for the most part, it's just an enormous waste of time and energy. And it just turns into a huge point of frustration and causes a lot of sleeplessness and frustration. And really just like it causes me to drift away from my priorities. I'm not perfect. I don't have it all figured out. I don't pretend to. There's a lot that I don't know. But there's also a lot of things that I do actually know, and that's what I prefer to focus on. I recently was flirting with taking a job at a residential treatment facility for troubled teenagers and young people, and it was frankly really tempting, mostly because I miss working with those populations. I miss those really troubled kids. There are a couple of populations in the mental health industry that I absolutely love working with. There's several, there's a few, but my top two favorites are troubled kids. I love working with angsty, nasty, rotten teenagers with a chip on their shoulder and a little bit of anger in them. I love those kids. I love working with them. It's probably because of how naturally defiant I am, and so I see their defiance. When I look at their defiance, I don't see a problem so much, because frankly, I have found for the most part that being defiant can be a gift as long as you know how to use it. So I'm grateful for my own defiance in most regards. One of the reasons why I went off on some of these little tangents, by the way, kind of goes back to sort of what has to do with the topic of this episode, and that is actually finding a way to improve your mental health. One of the main messages that I am pushing and advocating is that conventional treatment is just failing us. I spent a fair amount of time on X, not a ton, honestly, not a ton. And I've noticed that there is a movement of mental health professionals, psychologists, therapists, and even psychiatrists who are becoming very, very vocal and coming out against standard treatments, mental health treatments, especially on the medication front with SSRIs. I've been seeing more and more people surface on the internet telling their SSRI stories and realizing that, yeah, these things aren't as harmless as we've been told or led to believe. Now, I am not an expert when it comes to SSRIs and medication. I'm not going to pretend to be. What I do know is that a lot of people, most people actually can find a lot of improvements in their mental health if they just kind of get to work. One of the major reasons why we're not seeing more people improve their mental health, or why we're seeing such an increase in mental illness, is sort of the passing of responsibility. Too many people are too dependent on the system. They're too dependent on professionals. They think a doctor or a therapist is going to fix this for me. They're going to do the work for me. The solution to your mental health issues is looking back at you in the mirror. And truly, nobody can help you. Nobody can help you like you can help you. So learn to help you. Even just a little bit ago, I saw an article published by Forbes magazine. It was posted on X, where Forbes magazine said you should not do your own research. Unfortunately, the psychologist that posted it was saying, this is terribly wrong. This is horribly wrong. You should absolutely do your own research. And what that really means is that you should learn, absorb as much information as you can. And I make the argument that we should be highly, highly focused on outcomes, that we should be highly focused on what produces a good outcome. Meaning, does the person get better or do they not get better? Plain and simple. Are they healthier? Are they improving? Or are they unhealthier? Are they deteriorating? It's staggering when you realize how far removed the medical profession is. This is sort of the basis of this argument that I got into with this pediatrician. Is this doctor, okay? I'm going to just tell the quick story. This doctor is pushing medical treatments and talking about medical treatments in a country where we are sicker than we've ever been. People every day are losing more and more faith in doctors and the medical system in general, just because of how unwell and unhealthy we have collectively become. It's time for us to get radically honest with ourselves and say, hey, what we're doing is not working. When we see that, just massive spikes in the last 20 years of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, autism, mental health front, depression, anxiety, ADHD, just to name a few. Everything has spiked. Everything has spiked. it would seem that the medical industry has an obligation to get to the bottom of what is causing it and to fix that problem. Same with the mental health, same with the mental health fields, same with psychology, and clearly that's not being done. People just keep getting worse and worse and worse. So we have to do something different. And it's staggering to see how convoluted this becomes with other professionals. Oh, this is part of the argument that I got in with this freaking pediatrician. He's like, I use evidence-based practices. Well, they're not working, sir. Your quote-unquote evidence-based practices are not producing outcomes. Some people might be out there being like, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between evidence-based and outcome-based? At the risk of making this episode extremely boring, I'll try to keep it down to like one sentence. The difference between evidence-based and outcome-based is that evidence-based, I know I'm sitting here thinking like if I was in an elevator, evidence-based means that certain results were produced in a laboratory, in a clinical or laboratory setting. And as we've learned, data can be manipulated in many, many, many ways. So in a clinical lab setting, certain things can look like they are highly efficacious. I'm using a lot of psychobabble here. That just means to produce results. Outcomes, outcome-based is, okay, we roll it out to the masses and we introduce it to dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. And then check to see if they're getting results. And so the trouble is, again, medical industry, therapy industry is all stuck. They're stuck on evidence-based, and they have forgotten about outcome-based. And so I bring this up with professionals, and I go, okay, but the outcomes aren't there. People are not getting better. And of course, they always give you the same runaround. Oh, I use evidence-based. And it's just like it's just staggering to see the roundabout ways that we go about justifying the lack of good outcomes. The fact of the matter is the medical industry is not producing outcomes, and neither is the mental health industry. Sorry, I think I cut that off. Neither is the mental health industry, which is why I'm doing what I can to try and give people what I believe is the correct information or good information so that they can produce good mental health outcomes. My therapy practice truly is about helping people get better. Period. And so I have completely scrapped anything that claims to be evidence-based and asked the question, is it outcome-based? Does this help the person or does it not help the person? Because the fact of the matter is there are a lot of things that are going to help people with their mental health issues that aren't money makers. Yes, it's true. This is a for-profit industry, and they're always going to push things that you as the consumer have to pay money for. When every single one of you, or most of you, to some degree or another, are going to be able to implement these things on your own, by yourself, with virtually no cost, very low cost. So that's what I'm going to touch on in this episode. I'm going to touch on some of these things. We're going to touch on stuff that you can do, stuff for you. Really, that's what my content is about. I want this podcast to be a free resource for people to improve their mental health on their own without needing to see a therapist every week. Though it can help, of course. If you see a good one, you got to see a good one. Without having to go to a doctor, without having a prescription, without having to take medication, etc. So, in this episode, we're going to dispel some of the myths. We're going to scrap some of the bogus myths about good mental health, confront some of the lies, confront some of the stuff that's been normalized that's not working. Again, try to keep in mind, is this working? Does this help me? Does this help other people? Because, again, it's crazy. When you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't see how so many professionals go miles and miles and miles out of their way to justify the bad outcomes oh, because of evidence-based this and blah, blah, blah. I have all the excuses in the world why good outcomes are not being produced. That includes, by the way, blaming the clients, blaming the patients. Oh, it's their fault that they're not seeing results, blah, 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 for this and that and the other. It's our job to provide you with the right information. And it's your job to use the correct information. So, again, what I'm going to be providing here today is some correct information based on getting good outcomes, actually helping people improve, seeing people improve. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to dive into all of that. Stay tuned at the end for my shadow work journal prompts. If you're new to this podcast, I'm really big on shadow work. It's part of the type of psychology that was introduced by Carl Jung, who one of the OGs of modern psychology and psychoanalytic theory. Shadow work is where we just do a deep dive into the psyche and get busy pulling it apart so we can understand ourselves, understand how we tick, and rewire ourselves. Find the source code, really, is what we're doing, sort of like a computer. We dig in, find the source code, see if we can rewrite it, and then change happens. Shadow work is great for tackling difficult and stubborn issues that have been ongoing for years. So again, make sure that you stay tuned for that. We're going to do that at the end. We're going to incorporate what I cover in the main segment and put it into some shadow work journal prompts so that you can do some of your own introspection, self-reflection, and your own shadow work on your own if you'd like. Okay, so the first thing I need to confront is a very problematic concept of curing mental illness. Here's one of the troubles is that the medical system has, I feel like, made a fatal mistake by making it sound as though mental health issues or mental illnesses are basically like a pathogen. Like getting anxiety is not the same as getting the flu. Well, if you ask me, the medical system has packaged mental illness this way so that they can give you drugs, of course. So they can just give you drugs. So that they can make it sound like it's something that needs to be cured and that you are reliant upon a medical professional or a mental health professional to quote-unquote cure it. So the word cure in regards to mental illness is extremely inaccurate. It's extremely misleading. Now, also, when it comes to mental illnesses, there are different types. They come in different forms. They're not all universal. Anxiety is going to be different from trauma, though anxiety can stem from trauma, right? Is different from schizophrenia or maybe bipolar disorder, or especially something like autism. Autism, especially in terms of mental health, mental illness is concerned, seems to be the one that is more organic, right? Yeah, I mean, it's comes from something's going on in the brain. When it comes to things like anxiety or depression, especially, and even trauma, as well as other things, there's not necessarily a whole lot that the individual can do in terms of changing their thoughts or changing their thinking or changing their behavior to make improvements in that regard. Right? True autism. There's a reason why I say true autism. I'll probably get to that in a second. But thing is, with that, it seems like it's more of a nervous system issue, right? And so is therefore maybe more of a medical issue. And yet at the same time, for parents with kids who are autistic, if you turn to a doctor to help you with autism, frankly, they're not going to be able to jack shit for you. There might be some medication that might be able to improve cognitive functioning or maybe improve emotions and or behavior, though it's not a guarantee. My advice to people, if you have an autistic child and you take them to a doctor and the treatment isn't working, then go to the doctor and say, this ain't working. We need to do something different. And of course, you do not have to keep the kid at the same doctor if you're not seeing results. All of that to say is that not all mental health issues are created equal. They all kind of need their own understanding. They all kind of need their own, right, category of sorts, which again makes the notion or the concept of curing it much more problematic, much more difficult. Because obviously there's just not going to be kind of a one size fits all to everything. However, I do believe that in general, people need to understand what it is that they're dealing with. They need to get to know themselves very, very well. People need to get to know their brains and their minds, their nervous systems, the nature of their issues very, very well, become overly familiar with them. I actually saw a psychologist on X who made a very interesting point. He said, not everyone with trauma or not everyone who, absorbs trauma will develop PTSD. Frankly, I had never thought of that before. I never really considered that before. And then I was like, yeah, by Joe, I think he's right. I'm always grateful to get additional insights and learn things from other professionals. So that obviously led me down the trail of, okay, well, why not, right? If not every case of trauma leads to PTSD, why is that? Okay, well, obviously the severity of the trauma is in that discussion, but I think it's also has a lot to do with how the person approaches it. Honestly, the worst thing that people can do when they have a lot of trauma is to just do everything they can to avoid that trauma. It's like the harder they work to avoid trauma, the more they have to work to avoid it. And the more the pain builds up, the more the difficulty of it builds up inside. And sometimes they have to resort to some pretty extreme measures to keep it kind of stuffed down. So I'm explaining some of these elements and factors because I wanted to introduce kind of my first two tips, my first two pieces of advice in order to help people get a better grip on their mental health. And number one is get to know, I've already sort of mentioned it here, get to know your mind, get to know your mental health. Understand it inside and out. Build your insight, build your awareness around it. The more you can be very conscientious about it. So it's kind of a triad here. Awareness, insight, conscientiousness. Awareness is more so like being outwardly aware, noticing your external experience, relationship factors, how things kind of play out in your external world as a result of what's going on with you emotionally on the inside. Insight is a self-reflection thing where you're going inside, you're looking at yourself. Conscientiousness is being very, very thorough with those processes. I don't know why I struggle with that word. So again, you're going to want to stay tuned for the shadow work journal prompts because I'm going to help you kind of pull some of that apart. So number one, get to know yourself extremely, extremely well. Now, a lot of people avoid getting to know themselves for one major reason, and it's fear. Fear is always the obstacle. Fear is always going to just separate you from what it is that you need to do. As Carl Jung has once said, fear is your task. That's what he said. But other thought leaders have said that fear is the way, right? Wherever your fear is, there is your task. The fear is the path. If you have an intense fear of like looking at yourself or examining yourself, that's your path. That doesn't mean that you have to throw yourself down it and roll down that hill, but there are more delicate ways to go about it, so it's not so difficult. But truly, the hardest thing I believe that any person can do is to face themselves and to face the truth about themselves. The shadow work that we do is intended to help build that insight and build that awareness about ourselves. The more insight and awareness that you have, the better off you're going to be, the more control you're going to have over yourself. Now, I've noticed, like, for example, when it comes to trauma work, and it's funny too, because it's like, people will be like, are you a trauma-informed therapist? That'd be like asking your dentist is tooth informed. Trauma is at the basis of virtually all mental health therapy, almost all of it. Anyways, when it comes to doing trauma work, I have not found it to be helpful or useful to try and compel or force people to talk about the gory details of their trauma. I don't believe that helps. I don't believe that's useful. However, if I can help them build awareness around their triggers, like what triggers their trauma reaction, what triggers a dissociative episode, what their dissociative episodes feel like, what is the nature of their flashbacks, what is the nature of their nightmares, maybe, whatever they're experiencing, the more awareness, I want them to notice those symptoms when they're happening, as they're happening. And what I've noticed, like dissociation, for example, the more awareness that a person can have around dissociation, it seems like the more it improves. I've had this happen with many people where I just help them become very, very familiar with their dissociation. What triggers it? What does it feel like? What are the early signs? How bad does it get? What type are you experiencing? How often does it happening? What setting does it happen in? Does it happen at home? Does it happen at school? Or does it happen when certain people are around or you're around certain people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? When they build awareness just in those areas, their dissociation seems to improve. The more people get to know their anxiety, the more they get to know their depression, etc., the greater handle they have on it, the more control they have on it. So doing this one thing will absolutely help loosen the grip on whatever mental health issue that you're having. So that's kind of what happens with mental health is the mental illness, when it settles in, it takes a grab of you and sort of takes over, right? It's almost like it takes you and shoves you out of the driver's seat. One of the goals of having good mental health is to put yourself and keep yourself in the proverbial driver's seat. Increasing your individual awareness is going to help in this regard. I mean, immensely. It makes a huge, huge difference to always build your awareness. It's crucial to adopt a practice of this, a regular practice. Again, we use the word practice because it's a very, very fitting word. Mental health is not something that you do once. Again, this is why the word illness and cure, these terms are really problematic. It's like, well, if you have the flu, or if you have a disease, you might be able to get the cure. You might be able to get a medication and boom, the disease is gone. And that's it. It's just gone now. Nothing in mental health works that way. Nothing. And so it's so important for people to get it out of their minds that, oh, I just need the pill. I just need the shot. I just need the right treatment. Boom, it goes away and I never have to worry about it ever again. In many regards, mental health is like physical health. I talk about this all the time. Mental health is a lot like physical health. You have to work at it. You have to maintain it. You have to adopt it as your lifestyle. If you're out of shape and unhealthy, you don't just eat well for one day and do a couple of push-ups and boom, the problem's gone forever. So if you want good mental health, you have to adopt a lifestyle that promotes good mental health. By building our awareness and our insight and taking things, what we do is it helps us take things head on, which reduces and hopefully in the long run eliminates the problem of avoidance. Avoidance is one of the top 3 things that I see these days, that I see a lot of people do, that really, really, really messes with them, makes the whole process 10 times more difficult. Avoidance will always make your mental illness problems worse, way worse. By the way, another one of those things is isolation. Isolation is a killer as well. But when we actively work to build our awareness, build our insight, and we're conscientious about it, we're hopefully eliminating the problem of avoidance. And instead of avoiding things that are uncomfortable to look at, we're actively seeking to just build our awareness around those things. What I also find is that people find the process less scary, less difficult, less intimidating when they look at it from the perspective of we're just going to get to know ourselves better. We're going to actively understand the nature of our minds and our mental health. Okay, the next point that I wanted to make in this in terms of curing your mental illness does include the awareness piece, by the way. Everything does. Again, to me, that is the number one thing that I have found, and active practice of those things are always going to benefit you. But the next one is to know and understand how your own mind tricks you and deceives you. Again, includes awareness, includes insight. Every single one of our minds plays tricks on us. All of our minds will lie to us. All of our minds, for some reason, for reasons I don't entirely understand, I have a theory. If you want to know more about the theory, you can go listen to my Shattered Minds episode. That's probably one of my most important episodes. But the point I'm making here is that our minds do, in fact, turn on us. Our own mind, in essence, becomes our adversary. It becomes our enemy of sorts. It will turn on us. Our minds will tell us lies. It will lie to us about other people. It will lie to us about the world. It will distort our perceptions about situations, etc., 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 etc. When we don't actively teach people about this problem, they naturally will accept and believe everything that their mind feeds to them. I mean, imagine like having this nasty little gremlin following you around everywhere, telling you lies about everything. Lying to you about yourself, lying to you about other people, lying to you about the world, distorting your perceptions, making everything about you, and that you believed every single thing that little gremlin was telling you. And so we quote-unquote cure our mental illness and we create mental fitness by learning to distinguish when our mind is playing tricks on us and when it's not. When we just simply pause to ask the question, right? Is this a trick? Okay, is my mind playing tricks on me right now? Is this BS or is this real? Frankly, I'm feeling like this whole area needs to be its own episode. So I think that's what I'm deciding to do. Rather than pull apart all the ways that our mind plays tricks on us and sorting out those tricks, that just deserves its own freaking episode. Frankly, I feel like I could write a book on it. And while writing books is definitely one of my goals, it turns out it's way harder than it turns out to be a very, very difficult thing to do. One of the books I really want to write is like, as I'm writing it, I'm realizing like, damn, this is a hard book to write. This is very, very abstract, very conceptual book. I suspect that episode will be the next in line. So stay tuned for that next week. That episode, of course, will include some tricks and tips and tools and skills, some practices to kind of get ahead of that problem. But I've noticed more and more these days there are a lot of people who they believe everything that floats through their head. Unfortunately, you cannot trust everything that your brain tells you. I wish you could. You can't. For now, you need to understand that what you pay attention to in your brain, you basically feed. So if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, maybe paranoia, things like that, the more you pay attention to them, the more you're going to feed them, the more you're going to see them tomorrow. And the worse they can get over time until to the point where things can get pretty warped, pretty delusional. People truly experience insanity, which is a total loss of reality, a total loss of touch with reality is what I meant to say. So frankly, there's just a lot to this topic of curing your own mental illness. There's a lot. That could be its own book as well. In a perfect world, I'd be sitting down for 5 hours a day, writing in a book, and cranking out books. Oh, discipline is a struggle for me, frankly. I struggle with discipline. So I'm going to wrap this up just because there's so much to this topic. I'm trying to put some basics in your mind. I'm trying to introduce some basic principles. I'm trying to introduce some of the foundational stuff. Building your awareness, building your insight, and being conscientious about it, that's something that requires a lot of practice. And if you really, really want to improve your mental illness, focus on that for a while. Just practice that. Sit down once a day, 5 minutes. It's all it really takes. Journaling is best, and build your insight and your awareness. And practice mindfulness. Examine yourself, self-reflect, do it every day. Okay. Let's get to the shadow work journal prompts, and then we can wrap this episode up. Before we do that, quick disclaimer: I'm a therapist. I'm not your therapist. If shadow work causes you to experience some intense emotions, you need to use your own discretion. You may need a therapist to help you through it. My advice is to seek a seasoned therapist, someone who has been at it for a long time. And of course, as usual, you'll get the most out of shadow work if you journal about it. So do it in writing. I recommend that people get a separate journal or notebook just for their shadow work. Okay, let's get to it. Again, these are going to reflect what I talked about today, building your insight and your awareness. Okay, so number one, this one's going to require a lot of thought, probably a lot of writing. We're not going to have a lot of prompts this time because I want you to spend most of your time on this one. Okay, number one, why am I the way that I am? Okay, and this one, we really want to get busy breaking down and dissecting what has shaped you, right? You want to break down what has shaped you, what has influenced you, what has caused you to be the way that you are. Question number two, so we're going to break this down into pieces. Question number two, how did my parents and or family members, or what role did they play in that process? What role did my parents and or family members have in shaping who I am today? And number three, just because I really feel like this topic has become extremely important these days, and not enough people are talking about it or diving into it. Number three is, how has social media and technology shaped who I am? Okay, what influence has it had on my outlook in life? What influence has it had on shaping me to be the person that I am today? Okay, there you have it. For extra credit, share it with someone that you trust, preferably a therapist. Time to wrap this up. For me, it is a Saturday evening. I did not have any big plans tonight. There's actually a big, and I mean big, cold front and storm moving in as I speak. In the last hour or so, it has gotten very dark and quite cold. And I love it. Oh, God, it feels so good. Truthfully, the cold months, the cold times, I don't know, I just love it. I deeply, deeply love it. I love coziness. When I'm able to get really cozy, I'm able to do my best shadow work. I do a lot of good reading and a lot of good writing in my own work. So I am freaking stoked to have this very, very gloomy weather here because I love being in my cozy home. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to tell your friends. Help me grow my audience. How are we signing this out? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give my sign out, and then I'm going to play a little bit of a sample of the song Wood by Alice in Chains if it was classic soul. The creator of this is a guy I found on TikTok, the Professor Nick Harrison. Go check him out. You can find it under Art Official Soul. Super cool guy who has created, like, he's used these rock songs and turned them into official soul, or like classic soul songs. Okay, so you must do hard things. Go deal with your demons. Thanks for listening. Here you go.
Child of love was